You're here with a new book yourself, Valentine Grey. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's set in 1899, and it is the story of a young Victorian woman who's rather fed up with the constraints of having to live in the drawing room, and so she decides to disguise herself as a man and serve in the Second Anglo-Boer War, which took place in South Africa. So it's about empire, it's about gender, it's about inequality, and hopefully it's a little bit of a romp, historical romp as well.
There's a couple in it, Frank and Reginald. Do you think it covers issues that are still prevalent for gay couples in society today?
I mean, sure, it would be lovely to think everybody's got equality. I heard a bishop the other day talking about whether civil partnership should be upgraded to marriage, and he said he thinks that gay people have got enough equality. Now, I'd never heard equality qualified in that way. You might as well have said in the 1950s to black people in America, you're on the bus, why do you want to sit at the front?
So I believe it's been a few years since your last book. Was that an intended hiatus?
Well, since my last novel, yes, no, and in fact, bizarrely, next week I'm publishing another book. So I've got, when you don't do any books for a while, then you have two that come along at the same time.
What's the premise for that?
It's a mélange, a personal mélange, choice of women from history who I think we need to pay a bit more attention to. People like Ada Lovelace, who Charles Babbage was the father of computing. He invented the very first analytical engine, but the only person who knew how to work it was Ada Lovelace, and that's rather typical of the way in which history works, is that men might do the hardware, but it is nearly always women who work out the software. In my show that I'm doing this evening here in Guildford, part of my intention during the show is just to make people feel good. And what's lovely, I've been touring the country, we've done 40 dates around the country, and people come up and say, I've lost my job, or I've been very depressed, and actually for a couple of hours I forgot and I just laughed and had a good time. So I always thought that being in the comedy business was a bit of a waste of time, but I'm beginning to think maybe we should now provide these services on the NHS.
I'm not sure the government's going to go for that, but we can all hope.
Plebs.
I know you've been in the past a vocal supporter of the Liberal Democrats. Do you feel let down? Do you think they can win you back?
Yes, it's so hard to think about Nick Clegg and not go, oh. Yeah, I'm disappointed, of course I'm disappointed. Mainly I'm disappointed through the eyes of my son. The first time that he paid full attention to politics was the previous election. He was 16 years old, and he went through all the policies and decided which one, and he was for the Lib Dems because he believed Nick Clegg when he said, I'm tired of broken promises. And the first thing he did, break a promise. And to see the disappointment in my son's face has been the worst of all. It's a shame. Hard to know who to believe now, isn't it? Oh, it's almost enough to make you go into politics, but not quite.
Well, you nearly are with the news quiz every week. At least having a little attack at politics, maybe a nudge in the ribs of politics. I think on that show, your chemistry with Jeremy Hardy and Susan Cowman and Andy Hamilton, the regulars, makes it something special. Is it fun to record?
Yeah, I'm afraid the recordings are way more fun than the broadcasts because we record about 2.5 times as much as is actually broadcast. This is a heady mix of filth and libel, but it's enormous good fun.
And is any of it going to leak onto YouTube someday?
I would think not, no, darling. I think there would be lawsuits.
And speaking of lawsuits, obviously the BBC is launching various inquiries at the moment. What do you hope comes out of the inquiries that have come off the back of the Jimmy Savile revelations?
The most important thing to say is that this is not about the BBC. If anybody thinks this is something that you could happily confine to an inquiry to the BBC, then they've got another thing coming. This is about how women have been treated in the workplace for generations. I defy you to find a woman in any workplace who has not at some point suffered some form of sexual harassment. This is something where society needs to look at itself, and this is absolutely not a BBC problem.